All right, welcome back to another lecture on how to deal with people. And today we're going to talk about collaborations and teamwork. So first, let's start with the idea of what is collaboration. And I'm sure most, if not all of you, have experienced this at some point in your lives, definitely in your careers. But collaboration is any form where we're really working with someone to produce a work product. And now that kind of working with someone can take on a lot of different forms, to where we have very intense shared decision making and shared action, to very kind of passive, sharing of information and maybe kind of chatting about what we're doing. So this collaboration can kind of vary in a lot of different ways. But generally, when we talk about collaboration and teamwork, what we're talking about is situations where you have to work with someone else to produce a work product. So why do it? So typically working with other people gives us access to additional capacities, resources, or expertise. We only know what we know. We can only do what we can do. We only have access to what we have access to. But when we bring other people onto our team, they bring these new things with them that can potentially help us do a lot of new stuff. Ideally, this also creates a synergy of new ideas, approaches, and perspectives that it amplifies what we're doing by bringing in these new ideas and this new perspective. Brings energy, brings focus to a lot of different things. Ideally, this all leads to better outcomes. Now, I say ideally because collaborations don't always work. Certainly, if any of us that have done group projects in high school or college have experienced when collaborations go badly. But they can work if we follow some specific strategies. So let's talk about some of the good strategies to follow when it comes to collaborations. First, choose your team wisely. Find people you trust. Find people that are honest, that communicate well. Find people that are willing to buy into the idea of teamwork. Also, find people that have the capacities you need. If they don't bring anything new to the table that gets you towards your goal, then what benefit are they to the team? They're just adding layers of work or layers of bureaucracy, layers of decision making if they're not adding something new. Second, organize around a clear and shared goal. This is make sure that everybody is completely aware of why you're there. And not kind of confused about like what is the outcome that's supposed to be. Make sure that everybody's focused on this is what we're working towards. Three, communicate expectations and responsibilities. Make sure everybody in the team knows what they're expected to do, what they're responsible for. There's an old saying that goes, when it's everybody's responsibility, it's no one's responsibility. The best way to get around that is to break these down and show specifically where every member, what their expectations are and their responsibilities. Kind of going along with that, make connections between individual contributions and shared outcomes. So also make sure that our individual team members understand that what they're doing is contributing to the larger goal. And so they're less likely to work shared under those conditions when they see that their lack of work negatively impacts their teammates. Promote community and a team mentality. What we mean by this is basically promote this fostering ideas where everybody's bought in. Don't make people feel isolated or individualistic. Make people feel like they're part of a community there, that you're working together, and that which leads to a shared sense of buy-in. Share knowledge, resources, and expertise. Don't be self-interested. Open up, share, tell everybody else what you know. Let them have access to your resources. Let them have access to your expertise. Buy into it from your own perspective, right? This is certainly anytime that we put up these walls, these barriers, it negatively impacts our ability to collaborate faithfully and honestly. And finally, think strategically and plan for risks. Think about how all this is going to play out. Think about how different personalities are going to work together. Plan for those risks. Plan for strategies for dealing with things, and have this at front of mind as you're working through all these problems. Now, a couple of things to avoid. One, upholding institutional barriers. What we mean by this is relying too much on regulations and rules, maybe job descriptions, using phrases like, well, that's not in my job description. Well, that doesn't really jive with the idea of collaboration, right? Sometimes you have to go outside of your job descriptions to make a team work. So don't rely on these kind of sense of institutional barriers and what you are and aren't supposed to do. Kind of buy into the overall sense of what's supposed to happen and buy into the team more than anything else. Focus only on individual contributions, costs, or benefits. So definitely don't be self-interested. Don't allow your team to be self-interested individually. Put the goals of the team above all those things. And so make sure that no individual is seen as bigger or more important than everyone else. One-way communication. A hallmark of collaboration is teamwork is two-way communication, is everybody having a voice and everybody participating. So it can't be one person at the top dictating everything to everyone else, right? There has to be a back and forth. There has to be participation. Unclear expectations, roles, responsibilities, or goals. Clearly, as we talked about just a second ago, anytime that we are unclear about what we're responsible for, typically we're going to assume that somebody else is responsible for it. If we're unclear about what our goal is, it's likely that we're going to run into goal conflicts. We're not going to be on the same page, and our actions aren't going to align to get us to an end result. Micromanage or micro decision making as a group. So, I mean, as a team, we have to trust each other. And so we can't micromanage what other people are doing, but we also can't come together and make every single little decision as a group, right? So every time it requires a lot of time and energy to make decisions as a group and to collaborate and do all these things. So when it comes to decision making, it's great to make those decisions as a group, but you also have to think like, what is actually worth the while of the group to work together on? Or can I make this decision by myself, right? Should I use blue or black ink? Well, is that really something that the team needs to talk about, or can you just make that decision as a whole? And so what happens is if we make too many decisions together, it leads to decision fatigue. And everybody gets tired of going to the meetings. Everybody gets tired of participating. And so they just withdraw from the team as a whole. So we want to avoid that. And the way to avoid that is allow people to maintain some autonomy, even though they are vested in the team. And then finally, too much talk and not enough action. As kind of going along the other part is typically in collaborations, we like to talk about things, we like to plan out, we like to try to participate as much as possible, but that all has to be translated into an action step. And so another important part of this is making sure that our talk gets turned into action, because if not, it goes back to that entire thing where people get tired of doing it. They get tired of having the same meeting and talking about the same thing, and they withdraw from the team. They decide that they can do it better on their own, or they don't need the team. And so these are all strategies, and previously we talked about strategies to make this work, and these are a couple of examples of things to avoid. But collaborations are difficult to do as a whole, but typically what they require is for us to come together as a community, as a team, and focus on the same outcomes. And that is very difficult for us to do. And so the case study you're going to work on this week is going to give you some examples of how this can work in both positive and negative ways in practice.